Thank you for calling the Retroforce hotline. My name is Pom Pom, and I'll be your girl tonight. Just to let you know, the first minute is 99 cents, and all minutes afterward are 199.95. If that's okay with you, cowboy, let's get on the Retroforce horse and go! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah! Woo! Retroforce go!
And flames are pouring from the buildings now. There's cars toppled, buildings entire, just crushed and crumbled. I'm not sure if it's safe to report from my vantage point. I really need to leave. Civil Defense has informed me that the surrounding areas are in ruin. I see some people running now. In the opinion of this reporter, if this nation, or in fact the world, ever needed heroes, that time is now. That time is now.
Hello and welcome to Retroforce Go, Episode 2. This is your host, Dyson, joining you on Destructoid's one and only Retro podcast. Or would I be hosting it? Who knows? We're kind of just making shit up as we go here. Joining me today are my friends Colette Bennett.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. The voice behind the lovely intro you've just heard.
You mean Pom Pom?
Pom Pom? Is it one and the same?
Yeah.
Your alter
Don't ruin
ego?
the surprise.
Look,
Don't
I just,
take away the majesty.
I hope everyone just, forgives me for it.
I know. We got a good sense of humor here, so I hope you guys do too. Also laughing in the background is Chad Conselmo.
Word up, y'all.
And returning from the bucket land is Topher Cantler.
Bucket.
Bucket.
Yes,
Right.
bucket. That's what I said.
Well, I just want to start off today's show with a piece of good news. Once again, I have found a small treasure at our local Goodwill, which is usually full of garbage. It's nothing big. I actually walked in there today, and they had a Sega Game Gear for $4.50. Yeah.
Woo!
No.
Wow, that's
I paid
pretty
$40
great,
for
actually.
mine.
I've never played it. I've never had a game. I think I played it actually at Toys R Us once when I was a kid, and it was $4.50. I'm just like, I need to have it.
That's pretty great. Does
I
it
don't-
work?
I don't know actually.
Okay. That might be the
I
first
don't-
thing you should check.
I don't have like the 8 AA batteries it takes to fire it up. But for $4.50, whatever, I could just put it on a shelf and be like, yeah, I got a Game Gear. I'm cool.
Uh-huh.
It's cool. But no, it's all about old school. So, but let's get down to serious business. Some downloadable content this week, folks. And we're going to start off, we're going to go from worst to best. And yeah, we're going to start off with the TurboGrafx offering. It's JJ and Jeff. Now, if you guys have any memories on this one?
No. I don't think
None
anyone has any
whatsoever.
memories of this
Cool.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, neither did I. I went to it today. I actually played a demo copy, whatever. And it's awful. Awful, fucking awful. So that's all we'll have to say about that, guy. Save your money, buy some candy, do something else with it. Don't get JJ and Jeff. So, and then next up is Kid Chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
I did not play Kid Chameleon.
I played it.
Is it good?
No. Well, the thing about it, I think back in the day when I played it, I thought it was kind of good because,
Because you were
the
young,
kid was
it didn't
kind of
make
like
you better?
the kid was kind of like too cool for school. Like, he had like his collar up with a leather jacket and some sunglasses, and he got to change into some cool alter egos. But playing it now, it's pretty much the worst thing ever, actually.
Wasn't the concept like you would try on different masks and then have different abilities?
Yeah, kind of. You kind of get warped into an actual video game world in the game, and like each level, there's all these power ups you can get, like kind of like masks. Yeah, like you can turn into kind of like a Jason Voorhees character, and all these different kind of cliched, video game things. But
Like everything that was cool in 1992.
exactly. That's kind of what it is. If you even look at the main character, the way he's standing, and he's like, his hair's all slicked back, and he's totally cool. Kid Chameleon.
He's got a jean jacket and a skateboard.
Exactly.
I know. I hate to
Yeah.
admit it, but I'm sure there's a picture of me somewhere looking exactly the same.
Awesome.
Actually, weren't
Yeah.
you the model for Kid Chameleon?
I know. No, actually, I was the kid in that old 80s commercial who challenged the Simon handheld game. Remember that?
I actually
Wow.
do know what you're talking
I walked
about.
up in my jean jacket, I took my sunglasses off, and I beat that game.
That's awesome.
You know,
I
actually,
was the Gerber baby.
Kid Chameleon actually reminds me a lot of Lucas.
The movie?
No,
No,
Lucas from The Wizard.
From the Wizard.
Oh.
He almost looks exactly like him. I'm going to do some research. Maybe that was the inspiration.
I think it looked like every guy in the 90s who was like the badass was
That's
Kid
true.
Chameleon. Well, enough about that shitty game. Would you say that we should buy it, rent it, whatever?
I don't think you should buy it.
Okay. Well then,
I don't think it's good at all. Very.
Chad says no.
Chad says no.
But I know Chad's gonna say yes to something.
Yeah,
ActRaiser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely yes to this.
Why don't you start off?
First of all, I will say the ActRaiser probably is in my top 20 favorite games of all time. That's how
Really?
much I like it. It is such a good Super Nintendo game. It's kind of like a hybrid between like a side-scrolling platformer and like a SimCity kind of game. But it just does both so well that it's just kind of like the perfect little game, I must say.
I really enjoyed that game. I really, really did.
No, that's a Square game actually,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird because.
Actually, I think it's an Enix game.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
actually-
But so
yeah.
technically now it's a Square Enix game, but back then it was an Enix game.
Back then it
before
was
Square came along.
Enix. The one thing
Yeah.
I remember most about that game was the soundtrack actually.
Well, that's what I was going to get to too. It's really, really good.
It's really good. Yeah.
And it holds up today, surprisingly. I mean, I was just listening to it, and the music is really, really good. It actually sounds better than a lot of the stuff on the Wii, which is kind of sad. Did you play ActRaiser, Dyson? Did you do that?
Actually, the reason I was late to the podcast today is because I was playing it. And I remember I did play it back when it came out, and I actually liked it. ActRaiser 2, though, I guess was made by a different team, or they went in a different direction. I didn't really like it. It took away all the cool city building elements.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
none of that in there. It was so disappointing.
The thing that really I couldn't put the game down today, the city building elements kept me occupied because half the game is kind of like a side-scrolling hack and slash, hit with your sword, jump, jump, jump platform, and then you beat a boss. And that's actually not really that interesting. You think that I'd be drawn to the action more than this little sim shit. But I was trying to build a little town and get the little people to make bridges, and you're floating the little angel character around that you have, who's your avatar when you're looking down upon the tiny ant-like people. And I was stuck on that for over an hour. And I was just
Yeah.
like, fuck, the show's going to start. I'm like,
It's
gotta
the
build
best
this
part
bridge.
about the game is that city stuff.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
interesting too because it's so fast moving. I mean, you don't have to build the city and sit here and wait for an hour for it to build up. It just builds up so quickly, and then while it's building up, you're also fighting enemies with your cherub guy. So it's kind of like it's hard to explain, but it's kind of just like a really fast moving version of SimCity, which makes it all the much better.
Yeah, I think that the cool thing about it is that it alternates 2D gameplay with, like the whole like building cities idea. And it kind of, I don't know, it kind of gives you it refreshes you basically, like, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that. I don't know, that's why it was addictive to me back in the day anyway.
Yeah, I found that's probably the draw of the game, actually. And I remember specifically, I was like, oh, this game looks so great, and the action looks so great. Oh, I hate sim stuff, and it's just completely flipped around. Now it's like the action is, I don't know, magician lord, basically. And then if you're really into sim, or you're really into just something where you can download it and then just sit around all weekend and have your little people make bridges for you, it's perfect. That's pretty cool. I guess that kind of sums it up for what's coming out for the Wii.
Yes, ActRaiser is the only one you should buy.
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I'd say Kid Chameleon if you just, if you're too young to remember how lame we were in the early 90s, just play it for 5 minutes. But as far as JJ and Jeff goes, oh my god, just forget I
don't.
even mentioned it.
Yeah, that one looks pretty terrible.
It's a plague. All right. Well, last week we had, 2 releases for Xbox Live Arcade, and this week it only looks like we have 1.
Yes.
I mean,
And it's not very good.
really? Tell me more.
Okay, this week we have Mad Tracks.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. It's not.
Is it spelled with a Z like tracks, like Boys in the Hood?
Or is it spelled with an X like Mad Tracks?
It is.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
spelled correctly.
That's a
bummer.
first.
Yeah. Okay. So it appears to be some sort of Matchbox car racing game, which is what you're going to think it is. So kids, don't be fooled by the demo.
It's not a racing
I downloaded that. No, it sort of is. It's a collection of mini games using little Matchbox cars. Okay,
That's
and you'll download the
strange.
demo and you'll play, and it'll say that you've unlocked something, but haha, you can't have it until you download the full version.
Oh, I hate
And
that
you might
about
be having
live.
some fun. You're enjoying yourself and think, okay, sure, I'll waste 800 points and get the full version. Then you find out after you finish the race that next you're playing pool with Matchbox cars, or playing mini golf with Matchbox cars,
Well, here, let me ask
or
you a
darts.
question real quick. Are you racing on a
No,
dart? You're not. You're just playing a mini
no,
game. There's no racing.
mini
There's no
games.
competition. There's just
Well,
oh,
the
that's
mini golf thing is sort of you have four cars. It's you and three CPU controlled cars, and you each have a golf ball, and you have to use your Matchbox car to push the golf ball to the pin.
that sounds so fun.
It's
I don't
totally fun.
understand.
Wow.
I'm confused.
Okay, or my favorite is the you're on a table and there's candy floating, and you have to drive your car into the candy, and each piece of candy is worth a point.
Well, I know I try to do that when I'm driving on the street normally. I don't know how I would
Usually I
translate.
just hand
Yeah,
out
this
candy.
isn't as much fun. It doesn't work out as well.
Oh my god, this
Um,
game sounds fucking awful.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And the mini games last maybe 10, 15 seconds a piece.
What?
It's really bad. And then all of a sudden there's a race, and the races are kind of fun, I guess, or whatever. But the thing is, it feels like you're driving a Matchbox car. The controls are really stiff and awkward, and it's like the analog stick only responds to half of. It's like you've only got half the range you normally do with the stick.
Oh, that's retarded.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Oh my-
Don't get it.
So the demo's an old bait and switch, huh? Avoid
Yeah.
it. Don't
That's how
fucking
they
sucker
get you,
to do it.
man. That's how they get you.
It's if you're really super bored and have been lobotomized and don't like yourself and want to punish yourself for something and are just looking for some easy achievements, yeah, maybe go ahead. But otherwise, if you have any self-respect at all, don't bother with this.
Oh man.
Wow, that's dramatic.
Yeah,
Especially
it
when
is.
Forza's out.
Oh man, if with that ringing endorsement, I think we can kind of conclude our reviews of the downloadable content this week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
summary, ActRaiser.
Yeah, summary ActRaiser, the rest forget it existed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh god, and a pair of Mad Tracks. Maybe it would have been better if it had been spelled with an X or like a Tracks with a Z.
Or
That
three
might have added a little bit of
X's.
street
Wait,
cred or
wait.
something like
You-
that. But
You know who would spell it with an X? Kid Chameleon.
Because he's extreme.
You're so right. You're totally right.
All right, well that wraps it up for the first part of the show, and I hope that was informative for you guys, as much fun as it was for us. Before I go to break, I want to just point out a thing about the Rev Rant. So one of the readers or listeners made a comment about last week's, and he said Spider-Man Retro. I just want to let you guys know that the Rev Rant is basically Reverend's domain. If he wants to rant about Metal Gear Solid, Spider-Man, Pong, or whatever he had for lunch, that's what he's going to do. So don't think that it has to be retro. He's just a little ball rage, and he's going to come in every week and just going to unload on you guys. So enjoy that for a few minutes, and we'll be back after the break.
Let's go!
Hey, this is Reverend Anthony with your weekly Reverend Rant. Today I'd like to tell you about a game that everybody seems to know about, but nobody seems to be playing. I have a couple of friends with Wii's, I've talked to people with Wii's, but nobody seems to have actually paid much attention to what I think is the best game on the system. And that game is The Godfather Black Hand Edition. Now, you may be thinking it's a port, so therefore it has to suck. It has to, be completely ridiculous with the Wii controls. The Wii controls have to be completely underwhelming, and, it has to be tacked on missions and stuff. And none of that actually turns out to be true. It's actually the game actually makes the best use of the Wii controls out of any game I have played on the system yet. And that may sound surprising for a port, especially a port from EA, but that is, in fact, the case. When you're punching, it's not just something like in, say, Spider-Man or any other countless Wii title where you just shake the Wii remote or you shake the nunchuck and it punches or something like that. It actually turns out that you can do crosses, you can do jabs, you can do headbutts by that's one of the coolest moves in the game is you grab your hands and you move them up parallel to your face and you do a headbutt. The game actually makes your left hand in real life the left hand of your character and your right hand in real life the right hand of your character. You can throw people by, you basically grab people by pressing each of the triggers on each of the remotes. So you press, Z on the nunchuck and B on the Wii remote to grab somebody. And when you do that, it really feels, I mean, you're grabbing the remotes and you're grabbing the person on screen, and your avatar is a person who looks like you. You've customized it to make it look like you. So it's really immersive and it feels very, very tactile. It's actually, you get this feeling of grabbing a person, and when you move your hands to the left, you move the person to the left, move them to the right, move them to the right. And if you move while you let go of the buttons, then you throw them. And it's so incredibly satisfying. It's indescribably satisfying to grab a virtual character with your real hands and then just throw them like that. It's not perfect. I mean, there's a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but there's about a maybe 20%, 30% chance that what you're doing won't work if you do it too fast. But nonetheless, all the times where it does work feels great, and that goes to every melee weapon. It's, you get a baseball bat, you could hit them in different ways. It's only back and forth and up and down, but it's still pretty cool. And every gun or weapon has an execute mode, so you can hit them a bunch of times, get them to low health, and then it tells you to hold A and do a particular move, and then you'll do a special, really violent sort of, it'll make you go, shit, what the fuck, sort of execution. So if you have like a baseball bat, you hit him, and then it'll tell you execute. You hold A, and then you bring your Wii remote and your nunchuck like really close to you, really fast. And what happens is the guy takes his baseball bat, puts it on the back of the guy's neck, and then just like knees him in the neck, bringing his baseball bat back. It's complicated, but he basically like shatters the dude's neck just by kneeing him there, by bringing the baseball bat close to him. It's pretty fucking brutal, which should tell something to all the people that are saying that the Wii is only for kids and it only makes kid games. I'm pretty sure that most of the people who are saying that still haven't played The Godfather, because there's no way to play The Godfather and smash a guy to death by, taking up to a counter and literally moving your hands down and smashing his head into a counter over and over until he dies. There's no way to play that and then finish and say that the Wii is still for kids. It's that you play that and you actually feel a little bit dirty. It's totally satisfying, and that's why it makes you feel a little bit dirty. This is the kind of thing that if Jack Thompson ever actually paid attention to Nintendo, we would never hear the end of it, because it's a really tactile experience of you actually, pointing the Wii remote, shooting people, grabbing people, throwing them, punching them. It's very, very fun, of course, but it's also the kind of thing that gets you in a fuckload of trouble if somebody really irresponsible brings it up in the media. But I think that if you aren't playing the Godfather Black Hand Edition, you really should be. If you have a Wii, I would suggest buying it, not renting it, buying it, because it's an experience you can't get on the Wii. And in addition to all the Wii specific stuff, it's actually a pretty damn good game. It focuses a lot on taking buildings and building an empire and stuff like that. Not like Scarface, because Scarface seemed to have no real story other than buying stuff. It's sort of, in my opinion, The Godfather is one of the best GTA style games on the market right now. And the Wii version, the Black Hand Edition, takes everything great about that and makes it better. There's more missions, there's more everything, and there's Wii remote controls that feel really, really, really cool. I mean, when you grab a guy and hold him over a ledge on the top of a building, you feel like you're holding him there, and once you shove your hands forward to push him off, there's nothing in the world that feels like that right now on the Wii. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to see a lot more stuff like that, ports that are actually built from the ground up with the Wii remote in mind. But for now, The Godfather Black Hand Edition is a pretty good addition to your Wii library, and I would highly suggest picking it up, especially if if you were thinking about getting Mario Party this week, but you don't have any friends to play it with, which is, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with not having any friends. A lot of people don't have any friends. And if you're worried about multiplayer implementation, it sort of accidentally turns into a multiplayer game, because every time I bring over somebody who hasn't seen it, I need to show them The Godfather. I need to say, look at this, look at how ridiculous and awesome this is, that I can, beat a guy with a baseball bat in a virtual world by doing the same motion, and it actually corresponds to what I'm doing. It's not some sort of, you could not replace any of the motions in The Godfather with a simple button press and make it better. It is literally better with the Wii remote controls. It feels better, it's more intuitive, the gameplay is actually improved by it, which is something we can't say for almost any Wii port, much less any Wii game. Zelda Twilight Princess, every sword swing, you could have just pressed a button. It was just a matter of, shaking your hand a lot. It wasn't specifically tailored to what motion you were making. And The Godfather is leaps and bounds ahead of most Wii games in that respect. It's really, really just, it's very surprising, in fact, to see this degree of Wii implementation, this quality of Wii implementation in a port of all things, and in a port of a game that most people sort of passed over. The Godfather was good, but I don't think most people put it on their list of favorite games. But if you either have passed over The Godfather before, or even if you played it before, you'll be able to play it on the Wii again, and it feels completely new. I cannot stress enough that if you have a Wii, at least try The Godfather Black Hand Edition, because it is the best, bar none, Wiimote experience you'll get on the Wii. It's totally intuitive. And that's it for this week's Reverend Rant. If you have any suggestions or you want me to talk about something on the air, anything you want to say, give me an email at reverendanthony@gmail.com or just post it in the comments if you're so inclined. Thanks for listening. See you later.
Let's go!
All right, welcome back, folks. Hope you enjoyed the Rev Rant. Let's see. Last week we were kind of discussing some Odin Sphere, a game that came out from Atlas, developed by Vanillaware, which was released, I believe, last Wednesday. Unfortunately, Blockbuster and Hollywood Videos combined are the worst rental places on the face of the planet, and only one of us had a chance to play the game. That would be our little friend here, Colette.
Yeah, I had a chance to play it up to the first boss, so I got about an hour of playtime in with it. It is every bit as beautiful as everyone says it is and more. It is just like the first maybe 5 minutes or so, you kind of have your jaw dropped as you're watching the play, and you're just like, I'm going to control that. After you get a little bit more adjusted, you kind of get a feel for how it works. I had in mind the Destructoid review because a lot of our reviewers were not so hot on the battle system. I was interested to see what it was like because of that. I didn't have a trouble with the battle system, but my only complaint, and this was brought up in the review, was that the block button is the same as, I believe, the attack button. So you have to like tap it lightly to do one thing, and then you have to like tap it and or press it for another, which just seems like a bad concept to me. You have 4 buttons. Kind of use them.
Well.
Yeah, that's weird.
Is it one of those
Yeah.
ones where it's like context sensitive, where it's an attack button, but then
No.
like in a fighting move, like if you tap it right the moment, you'll counter?
It's supposed to be that way, but the only problem is that it doesn't always work. So, that's my only bad feedback about it is that. Now, I also was told, or read rather, that the further you get into it, the more these things appear as a problem. And for me, they weren't that big of a problem because I didn't play for, a really long sitting. So maybe they would be, but I mean, as is, just based on, getting to play it for the amount of time that I did, I would buy it.
I know the scores were probably like, or they were in the 6 range from.
They were between 6 and 8, actually.
Okay.
So,
What do you like? What was their main point? Like, why was it getting a low 6? Was it just strictly the combat system?
people did not like the combat system. I didn't really have a problem with it. It flows pretty easily. You have interconnected stages that you go through, and you learn to fight in those stages and how to interact with things. And yeah, I really did not have a problem with the initial layout or the fight. I thought the fighting was actually really simplistic and easy. It's that kind of game where it's like really like pleasing to kill things.
Always pleasing to kill things.
Well, I know, but like some games just have it down to a fine science where like when you land that blow, you're like, oh god, yes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about on that.
Yeah, so I mean, my overall, impressions of it were still positive, and I still want to be able to play more of it so I can get more into it. And I mean, honestly, whenever a game like this comes out, I always would like to support it if possible because I really like seeing people do independent things. I mean, I did not think that Okami was a perfect game, but I thought that it was a really, really good game, and I totally
Best game
appreciated
ever.
it. Yeah, well, you see, there you go. Anyway, enough about that because that's another topic.
I just want to ask you one more thing about it because I haven't seen the game in motion, and a lot of people. I mean, this game is getting a lot of attention because it's kind of supposedly heralding the return of 2D.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but you look at the pictures and you're like, okay, it's 2D, and a lot of people have said, a lot of reviewers, ours included, said you have to see it in motion. So I
You
wonder,
do have to see it in motion because, I saw the pictures and I was like, it looks really pretty, but they open up with a really small cutscene and then suddenly you begin to play the cutscene. And so it looks like this really beautiful, anime kind of style, but not quite, a little bit more arty. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I move? And then you move the character and you're like, oh shit. Like the first 10 minutes are kind of like an oh shit, like, oh wow.
would it herald
really,
the return of 2D?
I wonder if it could be possible. Because it would be like a modernized 2D. It's still side scrolling. But like Alien Hominid did it too. They went with a really unique art style, and they're completely 2D. So yeah, I think it could totally happen. I really do.
Cool.
I read some things from a lot of people actually, and some people even went as far as saying that it was the most beautiful game out for any system, including high def next gen systems out right now.
Well, I mean, artistically, it definitely, in my opinion, has a leg up in competition. I mean, yeah, you can play, games on the PS3 where cars look exactly perfect and it looks like reality, but I mean, it's not as beautiful as this lush world presented by this game. So yeah, I would agree that it could possibly be one of the prettiest titles I've ever seen.
Hopefully, that kind of attention will make people start playing a lot more 2D games, and hopefully they'll start coming back, which would be amazing.
God, I
Yeah.
hope
I'm
so.
sold.
I'd give anything for any more 2D games to come out.
Like,
There
can
you
you
have it, kids.
imagine?
Go
Like,
buy it. Support it.
I will.
Yeah,
I
buy it and
promise.
support it.
All right.
Especially if you're a 2D fan, check it out.
All right. Well, we love 2D, don't we, Chad?
whoopee!
Woo!
Well, I mean, I was thinking about it. Like, I mean, can you imagine a game that looks that beautiful as Odin Sphere? Like, can you imagine like a Metroid with that amount of detail and animation? That would
Oh my God.
I mean, seriously, that would be unbelievably amazing. And I know that everybody, even Nintendo fanboys included, would like go crazy over that. And I don't know why they haven't done something like that yet.
Honestly, it makes no sense to me that they're not doing that.
You never know, though. I mean, there's the DS is becoming really big, and 2D games are starting to sort of make a comeback. You never know. In the next few years, it could totally happen, and that would be great.
I'll buy every 2D game coming out if I can get a 2D Metroid on a current gen system.
Well, and this actually had occurred to me when I was playing Odin Sphere, but do any of you guys experience the sensation when you're playing like a fully immersive 3D game that you're just kind of bored?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of
Because-
touched on that a little bit last week. I totally agree
Yeah,
with you.
because I did too. And at first I was like, how can I be bored? This is the most fully realized, beautiful 3D world. I think God, Chad, heaven forgive me, but I think it happened when I was playing a Ratchet and Clank game.
Oh, that hurts my heart.
I'm really sorry because I know how you feel about Ratchet and Clank, but I was playing one of the sequels or whatever, and I was like, you know what? I don't know. I'm not into it. I think maybe because I played so much 2D as a kid, that's just what I like better. I don't know.
That's interesting because I was actually thinking about this last week also with the whole like 2D and we kind of blatantly bagged on Metroid Prime last week.
Not all of us.
No, it was me. It was 100% me, and I'm sticking to my guns. Metroid Prime, whatever. Some games but it's like, why do I like 2D better? And it's kind of like, why do you like Miracle Whip? It's just like shit you grew up with. Like,
Why do you like Velveeta?
Well, some houses had Velveeta, some houses had real cheese, That's kind of the thing. It's like, what are you exposed to? And being as old as, in the age group that we're in, everything was 2D up until like almost PS1, like that kind of era. Or the 32X, actually. The awful
Oh
Sega
yes,
system.
don't forget
Wow,
about
that
32X.
32X.
Like you can go out and have a fancy steak, filet mignon, the whole like 50-course meal, whatever the hell, wine, the whole fancy deal, get dressed up. But sometimes, goddamn it, you just want a cheeseburger because they're fucking good.
It's true.
I agree. I don't know, but it's just
It might not be as high tech and
Well,
whatever. but
as I was
it's
playing
good.
ActRaiser today, I found like the side-scrolling part. When I play older games, I go back and I'm like, okay, I'm playing this, Super Nintendo game. Like, I don't really take the time to be careful. Like, I'm just playing. I'm like, whatever, I don't care if I die, because it's an NES game, and I'm getting my ass handed to me. And I actually had to like stop, play it, after I died twice, and then go back and actually use skill to play this game. Like, I had to use some skill to play this game, and it kind of occurred to me that it's like a lot of 3D games, especially the ones I have at home, you can always just back up, like, your character. You can just back them up and be like, all right, I'm going to take a break. Like, I'm playing Red Star right now, and that game is, 2D or 3D, and it gets hectic. The game is hard. But you could always like just kind of like move out of the way and just kind of take a moment to breathe or like have a soda or something. And I just feel like 2D, like when games projected in 2D never really had that. Like they're just like play. I don't know, Chad. What do you
Yes.
think? Like, what do you prefer, games in 2D or 3D?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that was really interesting that I was going to bring up this week was There are some games I think that work on both levels. I know you don't agree, but Metroid and even Mario
Mm.
to a point, like I think that they can work on both levels. But I think there are certain games that definitely should only stick to 2D, and there's some games that should definitely only stick to 3D. And I think the perfect example of a 2D one, and I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, I'm assuming you probably will, but would be Castlevania.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they've attempted some 3D Castlevanias and they've sold horribly, and they just are terrible games.
Well, there was the N64 one, which was fucking awful beyond all
That might be the
compare.
worst of the bunch.
That's the worst ever made. But the PlayStation 2 ones weren't horrible.
See, I didn't think they were that great. I didn't like them very much at all, actually.
I thought they weren't that bad, but it was nowhere near as good as it wasn't Castlevania to me.
Yeah,
It
I'll
still
agree with
wasn't
that.
anywhere
I'll
near
agree
as
with
good.
that. I
Yeah.
don't think they were bad games in any way. I actually thought they were
If they
good
had
for what
if
they
they
were.
had called it something else, if it had been some other franchise, then maybe. But if you hand something to me like that and say this is Castlevania, no, I don't think so. I'm not buying it.
I think a lot of developers of 2D games, when the 3D games started coming out, they felt like they had to evolve their games to fit that. But what's really interesting is Castlevania evolved within the 2D realm. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 3 evolved into Symphony of the Night, which is kind of a brand new game, and there's a lot of stuff added to it. So I don't understand why people think that evolution just has to involve like switching to 3D. You know, I don't. I think that's a frustrating thing.
Well, I
that's
think
happened.
that's what I think we brought up that up last week, where it's like, or Aaron said, where it's like just because you can doesn't mean you should, because you had Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It was an amazing PS1 game. Also came out for the Saturn, but it was like the pinnacle of 2D Castlevania games, like up to this point. And it was at the same time when like everything was going 3D, and people considered next gen 3 dimensions. Like it had to be 3 dimensions. But in the case of Castlevania, it was just like they just stuck with 2D and they did it really, really, really well, and it's still amazing. Now I think that's I'll agree with you, Chad. I think that's a franchise that should always stay 2D.
And on the other hand, I mean, what about 3D? Like, I think a good example of that, even though it's not obviously not an old game, but Shadow of the Colossus or something in that realm, I don't think that could ever be done in 2D. I mean, I think a game like that benefits from like the huge open scope of like a 3D world, and if they try to transfer that back to 2D, it wouldn't work. So I
It wouldn't
mean, there
work.
is definitely a world for it, but I think that that's really important that people, figure out the difference in the two before they just make a game and just throw it into either one,
I agree.
Okay, what are some franchises that you think that made the bad transition to 3D?
Well, Castlevania, of course,
Uh-huh.
but I know you guys are kind of okay with that, but I was not a fan of that at all.
Well, I'm still playing Portrait of
I'm
Ruin
not
right
okay
now.
with it. Don't get me wrong, Chad.
But
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
don't think
true.
I would like that.
I mean, even though some of the Castlevania games have been so similar, it's weird. I still like them just as much. Like Portrait of Ruin comes out, and it's almost exactly like Dawn of Sorrow, but I still enjoy it just as much as Dawn of Sorrow. It's weird.
Okay.
It's like I can't get enough.
Well, all right, here's my question. We've got Odin Sphere, which just came out, which is a 2D game. Now, it's supposedly amazing. Colette likes it. It's just the artwork is great. Now, the question is that why we like it? Do we like it because it's 2D and it's because it's artwork, or is it because it's a good game? Because a lot of 2D games came out and can come out now that can suck ass. So it's like, are we just partial to the 2D environment, or is it that these 2D games like Metroid or Castlevania had come out and they were just really, really good games, and that experience like kind of bonded us to the 2D, so that when it switches to 3D, we're like, oh, that blows.
No, it's got to be that they're just good games, because even now, going back to Virtual Console and even just replaying old stuff, like I can play Bonk's Adventure. It's like, yeah, this is lame.
I
It's
like
kind of
that
fun,
game.
but it's lame. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings.
I don't have feelings. Don't worry
He doesn't
about it.
have feelings. For me, the most telling sign has been that there's been a couple of times, I'd say in the past year or so, when I've walked into a game store and there's been a PS3 on display, or there's been a Wii on display, and if there's happens to be a vintage machine on display, like for instance, I went to one GameStop and they actually had the Nintendo set up with Zelda on it.
Cool.
I beelined for that shit. Like I was not even interested in playing the PS3. I hadn't touched it yet. It was brand new, and I just wanted to play fucking Zelda. And
Did you
I
have
find
to
that
push out like a little kid?
no, like of course no one was in front of that.
I know that's the
Who
depressing part.
cares?
It's like crickets and tumbleweeds surround the machine.
Well, but I've noticed that about myself is that there's a lot of times where I will quit playing a modern game and go like boot up my emulator and play, some old game. And I wonder about it because I'm like, well, is it because I have childhood memories of these games and that's when I fell in love with them? I mean, that's not the only thing because there's definitely 3D games that I really love, but
Hmm.
more often than not, I go back to 2D when I'm looking to really have fun.
I think it's definitely part of the memory. That's definitely true, but it has to come down to great game design. I, I mean, because there was so many bad 2D games back in the day. Like
That's
like
for
Total
sure.
Recall. I mean, that was a horrible, horrible game.
Well,
And I mean, I think nowadays the technology didn't exist then, you know. So nowadays that we have 3D and 2D, all designers need to do is just make a really well-made game, and then I mean, 2D or 3D, it shouldn't matter, you know.
yeah, consider this, designers really had to worry about the content of their story a lot more because the games just didn't look all that great, and now you can put out a game and say it'll be beautiful, and you really don't have to have a story because a lot of people
Right. It
will just
doesn't have to
absorb,
take the kind of
yeah,
thought that it used to.
and I wonder if that
Well,
has anything to do with how we're feeling here.
An example, sorry to jump in real quick, I think of a game that made a good transition from 2D to 3D was Metal Gear.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I
that
would,
was, there was Metal Gear Solid. Well, one came out for the MSX, and then it was ported over to the NES, and that was Metal Gear Solid, and then there was Snake's Revenge.
or just Metal Gear.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Metal Gear.
Metal Gear.
Yeah, and then there was Snake's Revenge, and then it
Hmm.
came out much later for the PS1 in 3D. And the question that I was trying to say here is like, do you think these games are good because they're 2D, or they're good because they're good games? And I obviously from the sales of this entire series, you could say that this is a particular game that's made well no matter how it's presented. So, but still, I like to go back to personally, I'd like to go back to 2D. I don't know, Toph.
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at, like Colette said, Alien Hominid, which is beautiful, especially if you play that in high def, it's gorgeous, and it's a 2D game, and I got 2D up in my bucket.
I don't know. It's kind of, with me in 2D, it's just like I find that the game's more visually appealing. I find that a lot of times when games, even like a game like Red Star or whatever, another Metal Gear Solid, it just it's really simple to figure out where the collision detection is in a 2D game. Like you always know where your character is. Like if it's done well. There's been some fighting games that have completely fucked that up, but. It's just like playing, these current games, and it's like when you change the view and you go over here and the camera moves around, you're like, you don't have that 100% confidence of where you're going to hit, where you're going to jump, where you're going to move to, and throughout the game, most games get it right, but it's never 100%. It's never like, all right, that feels tight. It's never like Super Mario
Hmm.
Brothers 3, where you can actually look away from the screen and know exactly where you're going to land,
Yep.
while jumping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
just,
even with Mega Man, I mean, like these 2D games, like think about Mega Man. I mean, you only can shoot in like basically one direction. So if there's a guy above you, or you have to figure out a way of jumping and getting to hit him. But like with a 3D game, there's so many possibilities, and it gets so complicated sometimes.
yeah, I know. Now
That
we're all
can
going to
be a
sound
good
like
thing.
old people.
No, that can be a good
That's
thing.
true.
But the thing is, the point that I want to make is that it's so. If there are any developers listening, and there better be, God damn it, it would be so easy and so inexpensive to make really great 2D games now. I'm not saying that we should
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
or
Like,
just
you don't need
forget
8 million
3D
2D games.
oh, it needs to all go back to 2D, man, you kids. But yeah, it would be really easy and really cheap to make some really great 2D games, and I don't understand why it's not being done more.
Yeah, since you brought up Castlevania, it's like I don't understand why Iga is always the producer, director, or whatever for Castlevania is always saying he's like, we won't make a 2D Castlevania on a major system until we see the demand. And I was like, whatever. I mean, we talked about that last week, but
Here it
it's just-
is.
Here it is. Hey, what's up?
There's always
Yeah.
demand for that.
Like Odin Sphere is on the cover of like 2 separate magazines. It's been spotlighted. It's been gone over and over. We've gone over it. And for the main reason is because it's 2D game. And it's just like there's a market for this. People want to play it. Like there's a generation of people that grew up on 2D that want it. They want it back. 3D is great. I like playing like Lost Planet and Crackdown. I fucking love those games. But it's just like
How do you
there's-
guys feel about cell shading?
I feel good about it.
I love it.
For me, I think Wind Waker, if you look at that, even now, I mean, it's a few years old, it's beautiful. And what I don't understand is, especially, not that I'm in any way endorsing licensed games, but stuff like there's a SpongeBob game, like, why isn't that cell shaded? Why am I playing 3D SpongeBob with a 3-foot long nose? Like, I don't want to see that shit. I don't want to see that in 3D.
It should
No, yeah,
be
that makes
2D.
sense.
Yeah, especially when
Games
you're
like
making a
that should
cartoon
at least
game.
be cell shaded.
Well, it's funny you bring up Zelda because when that first came out, the Wind Waker one, I was like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me. I was so pissed. I was just couldn't say. I was like, you've taken my franchise and turned it for children. And
That
now
was the
looking
same
back
thing
on
that
it,
I thought.
now
Until
I think
played
it's
it,
great.
And now that is the most Zelda there ever was. Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I almost tipped over your bucket on that one.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna fill your bucket for pain. I'm gonna have to go. It's a close tie between Link to the Past, which has got to be.
Since things have moved to 3D, I think that's maybe a safe thing to say.
All right. Well, we'll let the listeners
just
decide on that.
shoot at me now.
We're just gonna put you out of your bucket misery. All right. Well, I figured we pretty much.
My bucket.
Bucket boy, figured we pretty much talked as much as we possibly can talk about 2D and video games.
Yeah, we're
this week.
2D'd out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry to drag you guys along on this weird escapade we call Retroforce Go, but I hope you get a better chance to know who it is that you're listening to, and so that next week you can point angry fingers at us and tell us how great Wind Waker was or how much it sucked. And we'll get back to you then. All right, thanks, everybody. If you want to get a hold of us, please email us at retroforce@destructoid.com. And until next week, take care. Word.
Alex, did you mean you wanted to take a break and have an orange drink?
I want some orange drink. The official drank, a Retroforce Go.
Or orange drink?
Orange drink.
Ernst drank.